Well, welcome everyone, and thank you for attending another edition of the Talented Learning monthly thought leadership webinar series, uninterrupted monthly now since 2014, and this month sponsored and co-produced by Thought Industries to share some great thought leadership here on the customer education segment. And today we're going to focus on how to scale customer education and taking customer training beyond the classroom. This is an important topic, and we're going to talk about today is, inside this topic and is about scalability. Why is scalability important? And of all the things we could talk about and discuss today in customer learning and customer education, why pick this one? And the reason is because it's impacting accidentally, I think, a lot of organizations as they get into this space and being caught unaware of how to do it. So what's in it for you? In our today's agenda, we're going to learn about customer learning and about scalability and why it's important. We're going to help you see the top of the staircase, which is certainly hard to see when you get going with your first steps inside of customer education and learning. So we'll show you where other organizations are going and what that maturity scale looks like. We're going to talk about the proximity of learning, how to think about content, how to think about technology, and impacting the customer life cycle, and really taming the complexity of customer learning through kind of a process of thinking about a process. And we're going to reveal that to you today through a great format of a roundtable. And we have a trifecta here of different viewpoints. One from my viewpoint of John Lay of Talented Learning as an independent industry analyst studying this sector. One from we'll see here from the thought industry side, and from Barry Kelly on an expert from a vendor side, and then with Brittany from the practitioner and doing it every day standpoint. So we'll talk about all these issues, and then that'll culminate really into Brittany presenting the full case study of ArrowStream and what they're doing inside their organizations. We got polls and audience questions throughout to make it interactive. And the goal today is really to make you smarter about this and help you start thinking about ways to overcome the scalability challenge that all of us are facing or thinking about to one degree or another. We're recording this webinar, as you heard. When we got going, we're going to ask lots of questions. We have speed polls, and they're exactly that. You only have a few seconds to answer, so stay glued to your screen here as we go through. And as a follow-up, we'll send you the recording to the on-demand version, but we'll also send you the ArrowStream case study so that you can review that. This is produced, co-produced, but part of the Talented Learning series. We're independent analysts. We study the extended enterprise. We're in our 7th year. We cover over 200 vendors, and generally we make our living by helping customer learning and extended enterprise learning buyers buy better by helping define what they need and conducting a formalized business process. And you can find more of our content at talentedlearning.com. And so scalability is important because it's so different than what the other organizations in our industry are experienced. So if you focus or have focused or partly focus on employee learning or academia and student learning, scalability is a lot less of a concern. It becomes a concern with customer learning because of the potential of so many learners and content that is inconceivable at first. And we'll focus on that today, I said, from these three experts. So this motley crew, excluding Brittany, is the experts, or Brittany's part of the experts, just part not of the motley part. As Barry and I are. Barry Kelly is co-founder and CEO of Thought Industries. Barry and I met about 6 years ago as kindred spirits here on Extended Enterprise and Customer Learning. We've been sharing thoughts and trading notes and strategizing about the industry ever since. Barry, if you could introduce yourself, and thanks so much for joining us today.
Great. Thanks so much, John. Very much appreciate it. Welcome to everybody. And, I'm looking forward to digging in with John and Brittany today. As John mentioned, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Thought Industries. We're an enterprise learning technology company. We work with organizations to help them develop compelling learning products for growth and scale, and help them transform the way that they're able to grow learning operations. We've been, as John mentioned, we've been at it for about 6 years. Based in Boston, the company, we've got about 100 employees spread out across the United States and an office in Ireland. Just excited to dig in a little bit today. We work with organizations that are, in lots of different stages of growth in terms of customer training, customer influence, behavior change. And we help them, build, as we said, more diverse learning products, and help them grow and scale as the audience, changes and requires more and more help to become proficient, with technology. So looking forward to digging in today, and thanks for having me, John.
Excellent. Thanks, Barry. And then Brittany Tamul, she's director of customer service at ArrowStream, which you'll learn a lot more about as a technology company that works with the food service organization. You may recognize Brittany as she starred recently as a guest expert on the Talented Learning podcast series. And we're really excited to have you here, Brittany, to tell your and the ArrowStream story as feet on the street here, expertise of what it takes to think about customer learning from A to Z. So welcome. Could you introduce yourself and a little bit about your organization to get going?
Thank you, John. I'm so excited to be joining today's webinar as well. My name is Brittany Tamul. I'm the Director of Customer Success with ArrowStream. As John mentioned, ArrowStream is a technology for food service supply chain teams that provides predictive and directional analytics. And have no fear, throughout the presentation, I'll provide insight into what that means, especially food service, as it's something that we're all living every day or nearly every day of our lives. Our technology shifts the focus of corporate supply chain teams in their decision making around procurement, distribution, logistics, and quality. And as the training hub for our organization, I'll be talking about how growth in the industry and within our organization has shaped our online learning approach for customer success. I can't wait to share my story with everyone.
Wow, excellent. Well, thank you both for being here, and we'll go ahead and get going. The way that we structured today was really into two parts. One, to talk about trends overall in customer education to help bring that through the lens of how scalability is relevant to what we're all on this call to some degree, living either as a practitioner or as a solution company helping practitioners inside of customer learning. So we've got a series of things that we'll work through, and all three of us will weigh in from our different perspectives. And then that'll all culminate with Brittany then sharing the specifics and wait till you hear how they thought about it, the numbers, their solution to it, the results that they got. It's all pretty special because it's special because it happened and it was measured, but two, it's just so in line with what we talk about all the time here at Talented Learning around the measurement of success and how to do that. So when you think about customer learning operations, it really comes in, almost everybody enters, or every organization enters at some point where they haven't been doing it or they haven't been doing it with technology. And there's a lot of moving pieces or balls in the air when you first get into learning technology. And it's, from what the reporting, the integrations with CRM systems, and we'll need portals, or we do have portals, and should we do or not do certifications, and where's the content coming from, and how do we schedule the classes, and how do we author this, and what about e-commerce, and there's PCI compliance and learning paths and all this thing that you're hearing on the internet, and it's overwhelming. And because a lot of customer learning professionals don't necessarily come from HR or training, all of these circles are new for the first time as you're getting into it. And so scalability, quite frankly, is something behind all these that, you can't think about so much on stage one. And as a learning technology consultant that works with customer organizations to define what they need every single time, my day job is to go in and figure out what all those circles are and how they're relevant and what are missing, from what we're thinking about. Because here's the interesting thing about our industry is that I never, ever run into the same set of circles and the same integrations and the same complexity on each one. Every organization is different because customer learning, unlike HR and training, learning touches so many different segments of the organization. HR and training touches the HRIS system, maybe the single sign-on system. Customer training touches sales and marketing and customer service and the technical teams and research and development and a whole bunch of different applications that aren't relevant in others. And so it can seem complex at first, but as we'll see here, it tends to follow a path. And so I've been thinking about the complexity of this for years. And recently Barry said, I figured out how to think about this in stages of maturity. And so here you go, the combination. This is Barry, why don't you tell us how you see customers in this path evolving as we're both thinking about these things in parallel paths?
Yeah, well, thanks, John. Yeah, absolutely. I think it makes sense, right? And from a transitional standpoint, it's interesting. As an organization, we sort of have two pillars of focus, right? One we call ultimate respect for the learner, which is about working with organizations to provide tools to create a more compelling learning product and experience. And that can be, we'll talk about that a little bit later on in terms of the diversity of learning delivery and how creative you can get around developing those products or experiences. But one thing we're also doing in this sort of second pillar, and it's core to what we do every day at the company, is managing and optimizing the complexity of learning operations, right? It's sometimes it's glamorous and sometimes not so glamorous, right? You're taking the things that take time, that are complex in an organization, and trying to streamline them. And we focus very, very heavily on that, whether it's optimizing how certifications work to be automated, or whether it's looking at how to simplify communications with Salesforce or sales organization, or whether it's being able to deploy a learning experience at scale, registrations, management, user flow, rescheduling. All of the things that on a day-to-day basis for a learning practitioner is highly complex. And so as we do this, we've started to see, as we've started to work with organizations, we've seen some very, very clear maturity stages really along the way. The first one, for most software organizations or technology companies is, everyone's got to start somewhere, right? It's probably a little bit more ad hoc. Small, as companies are getting going and getting scale, they may have starting to see growth in the users and the learners and the technology and training them. They may start to see growth in the organization. Maybe a product team that is their part-time job is to try and train, or a couple of CSMs who are trying to train. But essentially, they're just using a variety of, I would say, disintegrated tools. So, maybe you're doing a webinar, or maybe you're doing one-on-one training. Maybe you're using a knowledge base, you're creating videos, you're hosting in your product. But essentially, at that, you're starting to understand how to create content, how customers need to learn, how they need to be trained. And that's totally fine. I think, using a variety of different types of technologies and objects to do that is quite often what we see in early stage software organizations. An interesting one, which is probably where we come into play a lot of the time, is organizations that have, they've got their feet under the table with training, right? They've to understand what they need, but they're starting to find out that formalizing the structure of delivery becomes really, really important, right? Because it's okay if I turn up as a trainer or a CSM and I train a team, but what happens a lot of times is those teams change very, very quickly, right? Someone leaves, someone gets promoted. Now suddenly a product champion is gone. You can't continue to do that as you start to get more and more customers. So there becomes a real need to be able to formalize, the learner population, automate that, to be able to manage the movement of them, put them into learning paths, begin to give them more scheduled training, allow them to self-enroll, and also introduce things like self-paced learning, where maybe you turn up and you've been doing, one-on-one, or you've been doing one-to-many or in-person training, and you need to start introducing programs that are going to give you more scale. So you really train 1 to 100,000 people very, very quickly and easily, and also begin to blend those programs together. And when you get to this point, you absolutely need technology to help you. It becomes impossible to stitch all this stuff together with independent components. It's kind of like the marketing automation, bringing all the operations of marketing together under one roof. This is kind of a very, very similar thing. And I think, as we get into the last stage, what we see very, very carefully, and this is usually companies, stage 2 is usually growth phase. I think in stage 3, we're starting to see more established software or technology companies that are starting to focus on things like gross margins. So how do I begin to look at turning this great opportunity, this large audience, of customer audience, but also a market audience as well, and begin to train them, begin to monetize, start to look at licensing and monetization of learning as you do it, expand it out, begin to certify the industry, as you start to look at people who are providing services on behalf of your organization, whether they're integration consultants or whether they're support consultants. And the complexity of this part of the business becomes, especially at scale, becomes really important to be able to manage. And so we spend a lot of time with organizations like this too, who are looking to either go through a digital transformation or looking to, I would say, diversify more of their approach to learning delivery.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, without a doubt, I find organizations in all three of these categories on a regular basis. And it seems that not always, but as you progress from one to another, even though there's not solid lines, there's the process of outgrowing, what you've done in that particular stage, outgrowing or not having scalability for that. So the trick, in my opinion, easier said than done, but the trick is to begin with the end in mind and see if you can plan that event or plan your process as a series of events, but start somewhere and knowingly progress where you're going to go versus blindly. And so, that's the trick between, those are really maximizing their scalability and those that seem to, reinvent the wheel here on each phase. Brittany, you've done it. You've been everywhere, probably even from stage zero, which isn't even shown here of not doing anything. Where were you originally when you started and got involved in ArrowStream customer training, and where do you think you're at right now on that scalability?
Thanks, John. I love what Barry said. Everyone has to start somewhere, because that would have been ArrowStream when I first started in the training arena for us. We were at that entry level where we were doing great with one-on-one training. We were doing small group webinars to target themes in our customer learning, but it all comes back to that word and why we're all here today, that's scalability. And that's why we brought in an online learning platform, why we implemented it. And we're now at that intermediate phase where we have self-paced learning foundation for our new learners. We also do have those blended programs between online learning and instructor-led training, which is exciting for us that we could make that transition. And at the same time, for us, the key part has always been being customer-centric and providing that personal touch, and that hasn't been lost in moving through those maturity stages.
Excellent. That's good progress. That's good progress all the way through. Just to pile on real quick before we head on in stage two, Barry mentioned that, you can train, tens to hundreds of thousands of, or 100,000 or more different learners. And, that's a big scalability thing to think about also is planning, trying to think about planning for the increase of users as you expand through your organization and what that's going to be, and factor that into both the technological infrastructure, but also into, thinking about the business relationship of, being able to have the same technology platform through all of that. So knowing and predicting where you go is pretty key, because it's easy to find yourself, being a small company that has 100,000 employees. You're much more likely, or 100,000 customer or users, you're much more likely to find that scenario than to be working in a company with 100,000 employees. So there's a lot more of small companies with lots and lots of customers. But here we got a poll, a speed poll. So where are you at? We heard where Brittany's at. We talked about from stage zero, what's customer training, all the way to advanced. Can I launch the poll here? It's open, and we'll go ahead and see what we have there. Everybody, tell us what stage you're at, entry level, intermediate, or advanced, or other. Go ahead and put it in the question pane, and just to gauge the expertise of our audience. And we'll go ahead and close that poll up and share the results with everyone. Audience view. So, wow. What do you think, Barry?
I think that's a great mix. As I mentioned, so a lot of people in stage two, which we said is kind of the formative years of the transformation in learning, right? Of building the training organization in departments of companies, beginning to get the infrastructure and the spokes in place, beginning to create new products, new learning products, new initiatives, educating your internal organization on the importance of training, starting to look at measurement, so that you can actually prove how training is affecting those macro measurements at organizations like gross retention, gross margin, customer satisfaction, time to value, all those things. So it's really great to see it. And then obviously, those established organizations in the advanced stage where, it gets really exciting, right? You start to look at these are standalone businesses, kind of the cost center to profit center transformation. So really, really great mix here.
Wow, that's true. That's true. And Brittany, how about this? With all, I need my old guy glasses on here, but with all the stage 2 and 3 here, what's that, 60-some% combined there on that there's no pressure on you as you tell your ArrowStream story. So
I love it.
But and as far as everybody in the advanced bucket, seriously, reach out afterwards to me or to Barry. But love to learn your story and factor that into our research here. So, all right, we'll continue on here with the point of learning and how that's changing, or how that's changed with customer learning in relation to normal. But Barry, this is your one of your favorite topics.
Yeah.
Why don't you go ahead and take this one? Tell us
this is one. Yeah, thanks, John. It's particularly interesting to me. I think the point of learning really refers to, and as we kind of talk about trends, right? We're talking about maturity scales. We're talking about the complexity of learning operations. I think this is a trend that's pretty interesting. And what we mean by the point of learning is, where is that individual learning, right? If you think of the old days of online learning, with product, you might sign up for a software product, or you might be enrolled in a training. It might happen through a sales organization or some other order form, wherever it may be. And then you get an invite, and you dig through your junk folder to try and find some invite to a third-party LMS with with some logo slapped in the corner, right? Sounds sophisticated, not so sophisticated, and really, there's a lot of conversation in the markets today about in-product training and how products and organizations and individuals are being influenced through behavior change. So when we think about point of learning, we think about sort of in two ways, right? One we call context learning, which means, and if I rewind a wee bit and just talk about what does it mean, in organizations, a lot of times training is designed to make a customer successful. Ultimately, that's our job, right? Be successful, and that's measured by customers engaging with our product more, getting value out of it, and having business success. If they don't have business success, they're not retained, they go away. And so what we're trying to do is get them to success, right? Get them to that point of success. With context learning, and you think about it from a software standpoint, you have to be in software, you have to execute a task, build a page, send an email, create a campaign, send a bill for payment, whatever it may be, whatever task you have to execute, you have to be shown how to do it in an application. And there's plenty of products in the market today, DAPs, right? Digital adoption platforms, WalkMe's, AppQs, Pendos, companies, organizations like that are helping individuals make their way through Coachmarks or other ways to help you understand how to use the software, how to fill out and make effort. What we see is there's an actual really natural handoff point between context learning and application learning, which is application learning is applying the technology for success. Now, an example I've given many times is kind of about the landing page or about the email campaign. Anybody can send an email, doesn't mean it's going to be successful, right? Or anyone can build a landing page, doesn't mean it's going to have high click-through rates or conversion rates. And so application learning is really where the training organization comes in. How do we make you successful? How do you create a great landing page? How do you send a great email campaign? So those are things that we're seeing that are really incredible and interesting, emerging trends. It's also where they find access to this learning. So I think in this example here, this is kind of one of our in-app play widgets, which allows you to embed learning and training progress, suggestions, etc., inside a software application. And that allows you to kind of bridge the gap and meet the customer where they are, right, and what they're trying to achieve. So that can be done. And so it's a really natural, interesting place, right? You're delivering multiple forms of learning. And we're seeing this emerge. We're starting to see technologies beginning to work together and synchronicity around this stuff. We're seeing training professionals thinking more about where the point of learning is going to be, whether it's an introduction through an individual or it's in the software application or somewhere else. But this is a particularly interesting development, and I think something we're going to see, in the future of this industry.
I agree, Barry. I agree. More and more we encounter this requirement as we're assembling requirements for clients to bridge this, to bridge the gap, either whether, that started off just by linking back and forth and then single sign-on, in between seamlessly, between applications, now to advancements of bringing the in-app like this. The advances of WalkMe certainly, but WalkMe and those type of tools seem to be, for your first couple time, your first time in the tool, but then, what about after that, from the application, as you start getting deeper and deeper, and you've long since turned off the same pop-ups that come up every time. And so that line is blurring in the best organizations, where it's almost impossible to see the difference, or to see where the application starts and where learning starts, and vice versa. And that's really interesting, and it's very unique, I think, in all the learning technology industry. Everywhere else, it's a destination. It's always drive somebody to somewhere else to do that, versus have it be integrated at that point of need. And so that's great. So that just-in-time learning, though, isn't a new topic. It's been talked about for a long time. We've talked about electronic performance support for years and years in the learning technology industry, but it's always just been harder said than done. It's been hard to, from a technology standpoint, from a content acquisition standpoint, and really to be able to personalize it to customer learners, or really to any learners in any sort of relevance, was always a challenge. And it seems like a lot of those challenges technologically and from an innovation standpoint, or maybe they're the same thing, are being solved in terms. And so, for many years, that moment of need or just-in-time learning, for example, you're working in the field and you need to get some knowledge. What you can't afford to do is, go try to log in, find somewhere else, surf, find the right product, dig through 10 screens, find the role or the module that you needed. So that whole process of being self-service just doesn't make sense. The system, or ideally the system, really needs to know, from a personalization standpoint, what you need to know. And so instead of just having user profile data like in most employee LMSs, there's also a customer profile, what you bought, what role you have within the application, what role you have in relation to the customer, what have you taken. So, or what have you purchased, and what do they want you to purchase next, from a customer profile, but then also from a habit standpoint of, what type of content do you like? What kind of content do you click on and stay and actually consume? And so all those different things now are being factored into making sure that you can personalize and get to the right training, whether you're attacking it from taking a certification path, or more likely as you're getting supported out in the practical work field to give you that just in time learning. And so it's certainly a unique advancement on how sophisticated this personalization is going, and how that rolls into diverse catalogs of learning products. So it used to just be learning, or just about third party, but what's neat about in learning products with customer learning is that everything is proprietary. You can't go to a third-party place, almost never, and find customer content that's going to be right for your customers. It's always about your intellectual capital or intellectual property. So creating content and leveraging what you have is probably more important than anything. Barry, what do you think about that, from the types of learning products, and what's important, and from a scalability standpoint, how to think about that content mix?
Yeah, I think you nailed it there, John, just in terms of like the organization's responsibility, and to create their own content. You can't find content on the shelf to train individuals on your product. And so, I think there's sort of two sides to this. I think, it's interesting. I will say, like, our most successful customers have diversity in their learning products, right? And we use the word very, very intentionally, learning products or learning experiences, rather than courses or classes or anything like that, because we are providing tools for organizations to create and be creative about what they build and how they build it. And as we said, I think the most successful organizations understand that training individuals and training customers requires the ability to have diverse offerings. You know, I think you mentioned in the moment of need, role-based learning, right? Teams buy software, teams use software. So, you know, the difference between what an analyst needs and a marketer needs, or the difference between a content creator and a designer, are vastly different. And so not only being able to get them through, you know, curated pathways to be proficient with the technology being one thing, you also have to meet them at a certain time with a certain product. So micro-learning being especially valuable for top-ups, right? You're not going to get e-commerce certified or Salesforce certified through micro-learning, but it'll certainly allow you to figure out how to figure out small, quick, executable tasks. Same thing with video. Video is a very, very powerful mechanism for learning, but sometimes can be a passive learning tool, meaning I watch, but doesn't necessarily drill practice or give me the tools to be able to interact or execute a task in more detail. So sometimes, you know, a self-paced learning is introduced because, you know, that people want to be able to get more diversity or give people more access at scale so they can learn anytime, anywhere. And so, or events, or as we said, in person or virtual training. So just, I think that thinking broadly about what your customers need, thinking about how you sometimes reverse engineer your content creation process so that you can create multiple variants of learning rather than one very, very strictly defined learning product object. And I think this is something we've seen so much more of over the last 5 years, sort of the creativity and design of let's say, courseware. Maybe I'd like to, I mean, if we could maybe bring Brittany in on this one, because I'd be curious maybe from your standpoint, Brittany, you know, like as you guys think about this, I know you were doing a lot of in-person training. Can you talk a little bit about the diversification and kind of how you think about it as an organization?
Absolutely. For us, diversification is key because we're trying to provide content to a number of teams within a supply chain. And while they may have some similar functions, when I say to you procurement, distribution, logistics, and quality, we all recognize that those are vastly different roles in terms of their day-to-day execution. So we've been able to think about learning paths that fit each of those roles and then use a diverse catalog of learning products throughout. For example, for repeatable tasks, articles, documents are great because you can reference those again and again if you need that additional content. Whereas videos are helpful if we're looking at something that may be more complex, where someone can follow along with the steps as they're being taught to them on screen. And then for us, the assessments are key. That's what's pulling it all together at the end. That's what's ensuring those objectives are met. And then when we do have classroom training, that focus can be on what may need additional review based on those assessment results.
Right.
Wow.
That's great.
Great. Excellent. Okay. All right. Well, we're at another speed poll here. So, you know, one of the things that we'll talk about here in a second is just the complexity of customer life cycles and in all the different ways that customer training can aid in different parts of the cycle. And so while we have this open, check all that apply. Like, what do you use customer training for? We had a lot of stage 2 and stage 3s out there. Do you use it to turn prospects or try to attract new prospects or potential customers? Do you use it in the trial or the sample phase of trying to use education there to impact and move the needle? Is it on the purchasing or onboarding? Or is it in the engage and adapt, all of them? Enter into the question field if you have something different. This question's relevant. I'll give you just a couple more seconds because where it all started, it seems like was on onboarding. Everybody focused on onboarding, and now as that maturity, as customers move from, or customer learning organizations move from that stage 2 to stage 3, it seems like that the focus of getting into these other areas is just as critical. All right, let's close that poll out and take a look at the results, and we'll have you weigh in here. Oh, look at that. Lots on onboarding though. Very 77%. So that still hasn't changed. That's probably because that's the quickest place you can see the improvement. Brittany, that's where you first saw it, huh? Right in the onboarding phase.
Yeah, and we've, like the 87%, we've also been able to move into that engage and adopt phase as well.
Get them out there, vocally proponent for your solution. Great. Well, that's highs, but it's also very encouraging to see in the acquisition and the trial sample and the purchase phase, because I personally think that's the second untapped of used education for exactly that. If you don't learn, I just think that in our own life here at Talented Learning, as we learn new software on this, that, or the other, if you don't learn that as part of the process, I might just choose somebody else, right from the get-go. So you don't even have a chance to be successful in onboarding, because the one who allows me to get ahead on the skill set and try it and to get smart before I'm actually dropping 1,000 or whatever it is a month on a particular service is typically the one that's going to win. And so it's great to see that recognized in this cycle here. And so here are those different areas. Barry, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great to see acquisition. I mean, obviously, as you mentioned before, we see a lot of areas, I think mostly in onboarding, as you mentioned before, where people are focusing, at least as a starting point. But I think acquisition is really important. If you've got a complex product, whether you know it or not, you're educating your customers in the market. And I think more and more we're seeing the marketing organizations working closely with the training teams to be able to do this. And so it's an exciting time. I think trial is another one really maybe overlooked. Just the benefits of being able to increase conversion rates of trial to adoption is a massive lever. And maybe if your organization isn't thinking about that, they should look at that one closely. But yeah, I think we're just excited that the market, the organizations are thinking broader than just training the existing customer at point of purchase, and that the life cycle is much broader. So yeah, I think we're going to see more sophistication in the other stages over time here too. Yeah,
I think so too. And if you think about it, the content, though it might be at different levels of depth or broadness or structured differently, it's the same content across all of these different areas. It's the application of it strategically that's different. And so just by thinking about it, you can create a lot of bang for your buck in terms of repurposing and developing strategically. And so as we get into customer success, and Brittany's going to take over here in 1 second here, and these types of things will come into play. But go ahead, let's do the last poll of what you see from when you're measuring. Once again, we had a lot of stage 2 and stage 3 customers here, and as you move into stage 3, measurement becomes paramount. Stage 2, it becomes real, and stage 1, you realize you got to learn it. Is how it typically goes. And so, but what I find out in the field is that any of these are valid measurements that people are using from a customer learning. So let's see what the audience said here. We'll close this poll up and show the results. I told you they were speed polls. And there we have it. So customer satisfaction. So coming at it from the customer service side. That's cool. That's an easy one to measure too.
Yeah.
From calls coming in, registration and completions. That's where everybody starts for sure, because that's the one that's the closest to measure. But churn at 11%, a little bit lower, but with adoption, retention, and growth at that percent, at the 30-some percent, that shows, I think, that all leads towards churn. So that's great. Let's go ahead and hide this. And last point to make as we move into to Brittany's point here is that you just can't get by anymore on having Barry said it earlier, having an LMS old school with a little logo on the top left for each particular client. They expect the best right now, and from how it looks and how it feels, and is it like social media? And so if you're the makers of an LMS that you just slap a logo on the top side, look out. And if you are, a customer that's trying to differentiate with your customers, the world's really moved on to world-class experiences that you would see anywhere else, and so regardless of whether it's learning or not. So, but no further ado, Brittany, why don't you tell us all about ArrowStream here and finish up today here with all the things that you're able to achieve. No pressure.
Thanks, John. Again, I'm really excited to share our experience over the next 20 minutes or so, I'll be taking you through who ArrowStream is as an organization, how our customers leverage our technology, and then what that meant for us in terms of implementing online learning, the goals that we set out to achieve, and then the metrics and the success story from there. I'll go back to that introduction that I made about ArrowStream being a technology for food service supply chain teams that provides directional and predictive analytics. And I'll break down each piece of that for you. What does this mean? Starting with food service, as a consumer, we're going to log into Grubhub and get a burger delivered for the evening, or we're going to go into our favorite restaurant and we're going to expect it to be at the counter. We expect quality product, we expect it to be consistent and always ready when we hit that button or when we walk into the restaurant. And that's really what food service is about. How does that burger get there to us? And how do we get it so that it's always consistent and it's always there when we need it with every ingredient intact? So when you think about the complexity of it, there's a supply chain team behind that, and they have to streamline those complex decisions into metrics, into action, so that we as consumers stay satisfied, and in turn, we're going back to those favorite restaurants of ours time after time. I love the next slide because it's a view into our software and what it's providing to our customers. We actually like to think of it as the vital signs of our customer supply chain team. It's really the result of how we're aggregating that data and meeting customer needs through exception-based analytics. When we first set out to design our entry page tiles, as we call them, we actually modeled them after a Fitbit. When you think about your Fitbit, you're going in to look at your health and your vitals. It becomes how many steps did I walk, or how many hours did I sleep? What was my heart rate? In the supply chain world, this translates to our customers starting our day in the system, and they're looking at the health of their inventory, their contracting, their spend, and their quality. It's where they need to focus their attention. And dare I say it, we're tasking them with being proactive versus reactive. In a dynamic, volatile market of commodities, you can imagine how difficult that is. So for example, when we look to inventory, for a restaurant operator, this means that they stop a stock out before it happens. Based on their ordering patterns, we're predicting when the stock out will occur, which becomes a vastly different conversation of how do I recover when there's no product available? It's that ability to be proactive, to catch something before it escalates. Then we also see this in the quality side as well, being able to track trends. And we all watch the news. We've heard those stories of what happens to our favorite restaurants when an outbreak occurs. And the overall theme here is, let's use those analytics, let's be predictive, and let's take something complex and break it down into everyday actions that our customers can do. So at this point, you're probably saying, Brittany, all right, who are your customers? What do you mean when you say food service, when you say restaurant operators? We're providing solutions to over 200 concepts today. I love this slide because as I say these names, you're going to identify with them. Take, for example, Popeyes. They have a rich 50-year history of bone-in fried chicken, but effective last year, they became the leaders in the fried chicken sandwich market, and they took social media by storm. We have Arby's. They're the king of the LTO. They're the king of the national media with their catchy slogans. We've got the meat. And then another great example is Shake Shack. They've seen epic growth since they hit the market. They've made burgers chic. The growth of these organizations for us translates to a different kind of growth that actually affects ArrowStream. And this is how we'll weave in that idea of the learning and the growth and scalability of what we needed to do when we set on our path to implement an online learning platform. We talked about how complex the supply chain is. We see new personnel that enter the industry with no experience, which puts us into a perpetual cycle of training. Their expectations are that data is going to be there, that we're a technology-driven company, they want immediate results, and they need quick, efficient software with focused direction. And honestly, I see it more than ever in training now because the need for human interaction really isn't what it used to be. But of course, I'll be coming back to that as I talk more about what we did with the implementation of Thought Industries. This slide here is breaking down for you the breadth and the depth of our customer network. So the demand is take a complex data set and make it easy to use. That's easy, right? It's intuitive. Well, the attitude of run a report and we hope you find what you're looking for just isn't going to cut it. It's not sustainable. And that's why you saw that tile-based solution that I showed you earlier and how we're looking at the supply chain for our customers. So when it all comes down to it, this coupled with the next slide here is why we needed to take a new approach to learning. I always tell people this slide is good problems to have. We had 100% retention rate for 6 years. And when I go back to this idea of new personnel entering the market, growing organizations in food service, the number to remember here is going to be, on average, we were doing about 15 instructor-led or one-on-one trainings per month. So all of those customers that I mentioned, Shake Shack, Popeyes, they were staying with us and they were growing with us. Then we have our 46 new customers over the course of 3 years. And the number to remember there is going to be 13 hours of implementation training per new customer. I'm not a math person, but 46 times 13, that gets to be some hours when we're focused solely on instructor-led training. So as the training, the frontline support hub for the organization, we had benchmarks of our current state to measure against, and that helped us set our goals so we could deliver results. And really, Thought Industries was the right solution for us at the right time to bring it all together. So when we look at our next slide and we look at those goals for us, we had target new learner training. We knew what the number was. On average, we were looking at 15 sessions per month. At times, it could be up to 25 in 1 month. And we're talking about multiple hours of foundational content and knowledge within our system that we were providing throughout those multiple hour training sessions. We wanted interactive courses, right? The idea is there's a critical path to onboarding. So we could use those similar areas of focus across all of our new learners that made the content creation for us rather straightforward, which is good news. And then really it's an opportunity for us to set people on the right path and highlight our best practices. We can emphasize the optimal system use as we're looking at that data integration, as we're looking back to our analytics. And there also comes some uniformity in training as well. It's the shared experience for all learners, and it ensures they were getting that same depth of knowledge in the system. Second goal for us is really weaving this into implementation, going back to that idea of 40 plus new customers, 16 of those coming in 2019. Again, did I mention that Thought Industries came at the right time for us? We were averaging 13 hours of implementation time, instructor-led, which meant 13 hours of a resource from our organization, 13 hours of resources from our customers' organizations. So how could we get to a win-win there where we could supplement that instructor-led time with online content and save everybody some time in already busy schedules and days? And then lastly, adoption. So after 6 years of 100% retention with customers, we needed our legacy customers to buy into this as much as our new customers. And I don't want to spoil anything, but when I think about feedback, some of the most exciting feedback for me has been our new customers go in and they love the system and they say it sets them up for success. On the flip side, I have legacy customers going into the system and saying, wow, you know what, I learned something that I never knew before. I have a new shortcut, a new way to approach an opportunity within my supply chain from going through this training. And that's exciting for us as an organization to know that the reach is even greater than we'd initially imagined. So I've been building it up. We got to get to the results now because this is the good stuff. First, looking at our training requests. The graph here is going to show you the dynamic flow of the training requests that we were getting. Again, going back to that idea of an average of 15 per month. We released Thought Industries last September to a 74% decrease in training requests. We went from on average 15 a month to about 3 to 5 going throughout the end of the year. And that trend, as you can see, has continued into 2020. So yeah, you can look at it as 74% decrease in training requests, but on the flip side, that's a 74% increase in higher value for our customer support. In a team that provides other services outside of training, it's helped our teams focus on customer needs and customer experience. So we're delivering more. Next, when I think about adoption, this is another exciting slide as well, because we can see this growing in the right direction. Since we released Thought Industries in September, we've seen a 182% increase in the customers that log into the application. Every month, we're seeing new learners joining, finding great information. We're also seeing our veteran learners returning as we put out new content, as they go back to look through those courses and those learning paths that relate to their day-to-day activities, just to get a refresher. And this number is, for us, it's really exciting because we're also able to weave this into how we operate as a software as a service organization. As an agile shop, we're doing releases every 3 weeks. Coinciding with that, our customers are used to product release notes. They're relatable, they're fun about the enhancements that we're doing in the system. And then from there, they can go in and see that new functionality. By using that as a cadence for our Thought Industries releases as well, customers are accustomed to then going into, great, what's the newest release that I can see in terms of new learner content? So we're capturing those new learners, and we're getting returning learners by just supplementing those materials. And so that comes back to this month-over-month growth and user adoption. And again, that idea that our legacy customers are logging in as well. So how do we pull this all together? And this is the metric. Within every organization, this is what it's all going to come back to, and it's numbers. We love feedback. We love hearing that things are going well, but we need those numbers to speak for that. And so we have our 74% decrease in training requests. We have our 182% increase in logins. And then we have that beautiful number in the middle as well, 31% decrease in implementation time. We went from the 13 hours that I was talking about earlier to 9 hours of instructor-led time. So not only were we reducing the time for our staff, we're also reducing the time spent with our learners as well. Through going through our learning paths and Thought Industries, we're typically looking at potentially 1.5 hours to 2 hours of material that was otherwise taking 4. So it's a win-win for everyone. And not only that, it's changing the conversation during training. We're not hitting that foundational knowledge anymore of, hey, what does this button do? But it's, what does this button bring to your organization in terms of opportunity, in terms of overcoming challenges? So it's exciting for us. I don't think we could have ever dreamt that the results would be this favorable so quickly after implementation. And we continue to see it in customer satisfaction, not just in the numbers. Anecdotally, last week we hosted an implementation training session, and our customers walked in and they said, Brittany, I feel so much better about coming into this because I've already navigated through the system. I've already received a quality experience in learning. So in our time together, we can have a higher level focus. And so again, going back to this idea of being able to supplement that instructor-led training experience, that personal experience without losing the personal touch, has been epic for ArrowStream. And we're delivering technology and online learning that I think goes along synonymous with the technology that we're providing to our customers, and that it's first-class experience that's providing value, that's taking complex data sets and making them into something predictive and directional. Anyone who knows me will tell you I'm not known for taking a breath when I get into this excitement. But I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has and anything else about our experience.
Wow, outstanding. Thanks so much for sharing your story. It's great to see you just go through all the stages and to think about it and to get to the actual numbers showing your impact, role model here for a lot of us. Congratulations. So We've got a few minutes here. We've got probably a lot more questions than we can answer at this time. So we'll take some of them now. And anybody that we don't get to, we apologize for that. But we'll go ahead and follow up individually and make sure you get all your questions answered. But Brittany, so what was the process? You mentioned, try to summarize this question, but you mentioned about the 3-week cycle from Agile. What did you have to do to put in a process to react that quickly with new content? Are you working with other areas in collaboration? Did you insert a team member? What was the process of trying to make that happen? Seems difficult.
That's a great question. Early on, our customer success manager with Thought Industries recommended creating a blueprint for our content and what we hope to release. And that was extremely helpful for us because we have that plan. So within that, we're always working against that content creation of what comes next in terms of the learner experience and the blueprint of our software and how our customers are leveraging it. And then within our team, we have someone that's dedicated to working through all of the presentation materials, and then we all help with supplementing in terms of the written content, the videos. So for us, it has become a team effort in being able to put out that material as quickly as we have been.
Yeah, interesting. And I'm sure with numbers like these, you attract the attention of executives or continue to attract their attention as they can see, the impacts that you're making on the business fiscally and in many other ways. What's next? What would be the next things that you want to measure and impact? Are they asking you proactively, for other metrics? Are you thinking about other metrics that are important? What are your thoughts on that to go forward?
Yeah, that's another great question. In terms of 2020 and beyond, our goals for metrics, I mentioned we really started out with the idea of targeting new learners. For 2020, I think our goal is to target veteran learners within our network that prefer a self-service type of learning. We, as a team, we're frontline support. We're always available for our customers to ask questions, but we've recognized with the shift in technology and how we access data that many folks just want to go find it themselves. And I very much appreciate that. We all do. And so I think there's a whole new level that we can get to by targeting those veteran learners that want to be self-service, creating content material for them. And then through the metrics, we'll be able to understand how often they're accessing that material, what materials they're accessing. And that can also lead to different discussions for us as well in terms of training. Are we effectively providing that material so that our customers don't have those questions later?
Okay, great. Well, it sounds exciting. Coming up, one last question for you, Barry. What's next on the horizon here on customer learning as everybody's thinking about scalability? What are you thinking about? You're always a few steps ahead of the rest of us. What's coming next?
Good question, John. If you saw the board here behind me, I might give it away. But I think for us, really, it's about connecting the wild back to the learning technology. So, in our mind, we feel like it's one thing to sort of measure what's happening in the learning technology itself, right? As a measurement, the default measurements of enrollments, engagements, time spent, assessments, those types of things. Well, we believe, the real data points and the real definition of proficiency and product usage and product adoption is outside the learning technology. So, probably a webinar for another day, but I think seamlessly connecting data that exists, in the other adjacent technologies and in the market back to users, really where all this stuff begins to come together. And then also connecting the insights that really going to give you a pulse of how the customer's training is influencing the business at a macro level. So, those are places we're really excited. Obviously, like we said, we're always in the pragmatic stuff as well, down in the basement, plugging wires together and making things that are hard in learning easy, but and those things will go unseen for the most part. But I think, you know, in terms of the market, I think really it's about time that we all try to figure out how are we, you know, influencing organizations at a macro level through training. It's a very exciting time for the industry.
Wow. Excellent. Well, great summation. It's super exciting to see what's coming down the pike and really how much innovation there is in customer learning. But to summarize from today, that customer learning is mainstream. Every organization is doing it. Every organization has to start somewhere, whether that's big or small, and scalability has to be something that you think about really from minute one. Scalability in terms of the platform you use, your content approach, your content mix, the proximity of learning, all of that is things that need to be in the forefront of your mind as you go through these steps. Even though you can't see the top of the staircase and you don't know exactly where you're going to end, to try to plan for that longevity gives you additional efficiencies and horsepower. And as you heard from Brittany, it gets you so much closer to your finger on the pulse of the true business, of truly being a business partner with your own organization to help in all aspects in terms of revenue and customer service and success. And all of that's possible now, and all of that is possible in a measurable and an impactful way that nobody else in learning technology gets to enjoy but us here inside the customer segment. So as you go through those levels, congratulations, and you know, continue to look here and elsewhere, Thought Industries, and to understand what's coming next in the process to prioritize customer learning for the entire life cycle. So thanks so much, listeners, for tuning in to another episode here. Barry Kelly, co-founder and CEO of Thought Industries. Thanks for sharing your expertise. Great to catch up again. And Brittany Tamul, Director of Customer Success, ArrowStream. Thanks so much for pulling out of your busy day here to share your whole story. Just fascinating to hear, and congratulations on your progress.
Thank you, John.
All right. Well, I hope to see you on the next one. We'll follow up here with an email shortly with the recording of this, and we'll also have that ArrowStream case study out to you here before long, so you can follow up. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me or Barry at thoughtindustries.com there. Whoops. And we'll make sure that we get your answers. And if there are any questions that weren't answered, we'll answer them soon. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.